Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't be that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has over 7 years of law enforcement analysis experience. She's currently the Manager Intelligence Analyst with the Orange County Public School District Police. She holds a Master's in Science in Criminal Justice with an emphasis on criminal profiling, crime analysis, and police leadership. She also holds an FDLE analyst certification. Please welcome Stephanie Francois. Stephanie, how we doing?
Hi, how are you doing, Jason?
I am doing very well. Francois, that just like flows off the tongue nicely.
I do like how one of my coworkers in particular says it very fancy too, and it's funny. It's funny to hear.
Yeah. So just a little housekeeping for our audience. We are going to do a calling segment later, the favorite first job. So if you want to share your favorite first job, let us know. Call into the hotline. All right, Stephanie, how did you discover the law enforcement analysis profession?
So I discovered it, I think it was when I started watching a lot of investigation discovery and crime shows, and I feel like typically that's what everyone says, like they just watch the ID channel and they kind of get hooked. And I don't want to say liked, because of course they're sad stories, but just the investigative side of it. And I just knew I found that interesting, how like what investigative tools and techniques they use to solve the case. And so I'm like, okay, let's dig a little bit more into that. So I knew I didn't want to be a police officer, but I kind of wanted to do something in law enforcement. So I just started exploring my options. And while I was attending at Valencia College for my general studies, it was just a lot of thinking. Either social worker or psychology, because I knew I wanted to help people and do a profession in that aspect. So then I had to think some more about it. And then I came across, when I attended UCF, and I did a UCF externship at the Orange County Sheriff's Office. And this externship was pretty much like kind of like a day, what OCSO careers are there, and like kind of like their daily duties. So you kind of get to explore the whole CID building, and I came across CSI and of course CID, their Criminal Investigations Division, and I'm like, this is so cool. Okay, I want to be a detective without a badge. And so as they were doing a whole lot of presentations at the time, the crime analysis manager was presented, and I had no idea that there was crime analysis. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is like behind the scenes. I'm behind a computer desk, and all my work can be done in a computer. And yeah, so that was, I think, for sure when I discovered that a law enforcement analyst profession. And so I spoke to the manager there at the time, and it was great for me because they were looking for an internship, and it was a paid internship. And so I applied, and I was able to get school credit for it as well. So I was gaining experience, gaining college credit, and it was paid, and it was just great experience because they really let me do anything and everything. Like, they gave me all the exposure of full-time analyst. So I learned so much in the 2 years that I was there.
Nice. And so you called it the original one, an externship. So
yes.
How did that get in front of you?
I think they had it somewhere in like the criminal justice building at UCF, or it was either advertised in email or something. And when I saw that it was just like, pretty much you're going to go to the sheriff's office for 2 days and you're going to explore careers that they have there. And that's all it was. It was like a job shadowing type. And we went through every department or unit and kind of got to see what their daily work life is. And so that was great, because they kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't even know this was here. I didn't even know they had this. And so that was a great externship. Yeah, because I never even knew about externships either. So that was a good one.
So you might have said it and I missed it. Was that just for the sheriff's office, or was that for Orange County as a whole?
It was just for the sheriff's office.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great opportunity. Yeah. And you said UCF, so that's University of Central Florida for those that might not know.
Oh yes.
And so yeah, that's a ginormous school.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of people go there. You can get lost.
Yes. It's huge.
But you found your way to this externship that led you down your path. So excellent. So then you get the internship, and even the internship's an interesting experience for you because, as you mentioned, number one, it was paid, and number two, it went on for more than a semester or a short term. You were there for a couple of years.
Yes, yes. So when I came across this internship, so when I spoke to the crime analysis manager, they were looking for two interns, and so I had to apply just like any full-time position. If you were to apply at the sheriff's office, it was kind of the same process because of course you're going to be exposed to a lot of sensitive information and criminal cases. So I had to go through the background as any normal candidate applying there full-time, and then they had me go in there to interview me, and then I had to go through like all the background background research and stuff, which was kind of intimidating at first because then I had to do the voice stress analyzer, so they had to do all that stuff and ask me a bunch of questions, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like, I'm like, it's just an internship, but of course it's not just an internship, right? Because of all the stuff I was going to be exposed to. But I got it, and it was just great. It was just a great opportunity, and of course at first, like anything, I've never done it before, and I know I would say the first year there was more about learning the systems that they use and how they do their stats and how they kind of monitor their cases and a bunch of report reading, and then the fun part of it, which is the investigation and the like social media research and all that stuff that I really enjoyed doing. And I would say I had great trainers there that I learned a lot from them. And then they kind of put me more with the robbery unit, and I loved that because it was a little bit more interesting because there was more information to it. And so exposed to either video surveillance or having a potential lead, and the detectives there at the time were super friendly and asking for help, and again, like giving me that exposure and wanting my help, and it was just so much fun to do, and I really enjoyed that.
So back to the evaluation process. What did you say it was? A stress
It was like
detection?
I feel like I forget the name. I think it was a voice stress analyzer, and they pretty much give you like a questionnaire, and you have to answer like yes or no. Like of course they'll ask you the questions that they know is true, which is like your name and where you're applying to, and then leading up to like, have you ever done this, or have you ever like drank underage, or so, like questions like that, just to know like how, or have you ever been involved in a crime. And I'm just like, wow.
So it wasn't necessarily. Was it also a polygraph?
No, so they didn't call it a polygraph. I think it's something similar. Yeah, it was something similar to that, but it was just like something I was connected to, and I guess they would just analyze my voice and how I was responding to the questions. So that was
okay. Well, you got through it, so they either were okay with what you said yes to, or you didn't lie.
No, right. Right. It's like I'm like, I prepared for this career my whole life. I'm like, I'm good. I can do it.
Yeah, I remember I went in for an internship where I eventually got hired with the Washington Baltimore HIDA, and I was moving clear across multiple states to get to this internship, right? So I was at Cincinnati, and I was coming over to Baltimore, and everything was lined up or everything, but they said, oh, by the way, you still have to go in for this investigative interview. And I'm like, oh, what if I get all the way over there and then they tell me that you're disqualified or whatever it is? And it was just so shit. And I remember they handed me the piece of paper and like it said all the questions that they were asking. And I probably had the worst poker face ever because my face lit up when I was like, oh, okay, I got like they're not going to ask me anything that I can't answer with confidence or something like that I really got to worry about. I was like a huge sigh of relief. So, but leading up to that is stressful. I mean, you're young and you have no idea what you're getting into. You've never done it before, and it could really, you just don't want to poop the bed kind of thing where you miss out on an opportunity.
Right. But I knew I would pass it. It was just great to be selected, because even if you do all that, at the end they would have to select you. First, there was other candidate applicants, so I was just blessed with the opportunity.
Yeah. Now, did you get paid like hourly? Was it a 40-hour week pay?
It was paid hourly, and it was, I think, biweekly.
Yeah. How much do you pay an hour?
It was $12.50 an hour.
All right, man.
At the time, I was still hanging on to my other job because I'm like, I'm gonna have to do both and schooling. So it was a lot, but that was the career I wanted. So I'm like, no matter what, I want to gain the experience. So
yeah,
it was a busy time.
Yeah, no, that's not too bad. $12 an hour back. It was just 2017, 2018. That's not too bad. And then I just said
Hmm.
you were gaining great experience because a lot of times those internships aren't paying at all. So you're doing
No,
all of that for
exactly.
the experience. So
Yeah, and it was local. It was not too far from me, and I'm like, I can't really not miss out on that. It's not too far from me. It was paid, and like you said, a lot are unpaid, and
mhm,
regardless, it's great internships, regardless if they're paid or not. But the fact that it was
yeah,
paid it was even better.
yeah. So when you look back now during your time there and just starting out as an intern, what sticks out to you? Was there something that really surprised you, or is something you find funny now when you think back at it?
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to say I was oblivious, but just the not knowing how much crime does happen. I'm not saying that Orange County is just like flooded with crimes 24/7 and it's murders here and robberies here, but you just really reading the cases just start to see how much crime is in the area. You just would never know unless you're either seeing it on the news, but even not everything's in the news. And then just like what's going on in your area. So that kind of opened my eyes to wow, like it's not just in the box I'm living. Like there's just so much more. So that I think, and I was young. I think it was early 20s. So that exposure was just like, okay, yeah, wow, this is the real world.
Yeah, and everything's. I mean, you're coming in, and the stream's already there, right? Like the water's
Hmm.
already flowing, everything's moving, and everybody else has their own assignment and role, and are doing these other things, and you're just coming in, just kind of wide-eyed and just amazed.
Yes. So everything was just like, wow, and I want to learn more, and yeah, it was just very eager to learn, to know more, and how things are done, and it's just like I knew doing, and it was great even doing the internship because let's just say you did end up liking it, at least you'll
Mm,
like it, and so for me, of course, I ended up really liking it. So yeah, I knew it was something I wanted to do, so I continued getting
yeah.
my master's in criminal justice and doing the other certifications and just trying to get the education side of it, but of course, like the experience.
Yeah. Well, hey, that was me in undergrad. In undergrad, I interned with a local attorney, thinking that maybe I wanted to go to law school. And that experience with their advice and taking the LSAT, I decided not to go on. So it was something that I was like, okay, I know I don't want to do that. I need to find a different avenue. So
Mm-hmm.
to your point, yeah, it's
Yeah.
sometimes figuring out what you don't want to do does help. So,
Yes.
all right. You mentioned you were part of the robbery unit,
Yes.
and this brings us to your analyst badge story, which, for those that may be new to the show, the analyst badge story is a career-defining case or project that an analyst works. So it's here that you are in 2018, where you're working on a robbery spree.
It was a robbery case.
Hmm.
I can't remember the exact details, but I was helping a detective with one of his cases, and he had provided me a Facebook account and a nickname, I believe. And through Facebook, I was able to do some digging and trying to find as much information that I can through social media. And then I came across the suspect's significant other and a potential name, and I was able to even catch his name because I noticed in the Facebook, like the hyperlink, it had like facebook.com/ whatever name, and I'm like, okay, that probably is his name, his real name. And so I was screenshot one of his photos and I uploaded into a facial recognition system that was used at the time. And I got a hit. And so I had let the detective know, and it actually led to a positive ID and closing the case. So I'm like, wow. I'm like, this is great. Because, of course, me doing it for the first time and being able to help, it was a great feeling to know that I was able to do it and do with all the investigation and research. It led to closing the case. So I'd say that was fun.
With the facial recognition software, the picture you were starting with, how clear was it?
It was a good frontal view. So I was able to get a good he had a good picture where I was able to upload it. And so of
Mhm.
course that system pulls from booking photos and their driver's license, and so it definitely helped to get that match, the quality of the photo too.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was able to come up, and of course when the side by side photos, I'm like, yeah, that looks like him. So I just sent it off to the detective, and then he further investigated what he needed to do, and yeah, it became a positive ID.
Yeah. Huh. So with the software that you use, did you know much about the software that you use, the facial recognition software?
No, I know I used it there for the first time, and I had to do a training prior to using it, kind
Hmm.
of like the ins and outs of it and what pictures are best to upload, and definitely like the frontal shots are the best ones to upload. But that was it. It was just uploading it and seeing if anything would come up. I believe it's a long time ago, but I believe I was able to search, like, of course, like through like gender specific or race, or what was it, by county. And I think, yeah, I was able to like have options on how I wanted my search or where I wanted it to lead the search.
Yeah, I remember. See, it's interesting you're looking at this at 2018 because I want to say it was about 2009, 2010 that I was first introduced to facial recognition software. And at the time, I know that it was the eyes were a big deal. Like if you could see, if you could get a good picture of the eyes and that measuring the distance in between the eyes and the eyes in relation to the rest of the face, that seemed to be the best way to get the most accurate comparison. And it kind of that's the reason I'm asking is like it's about 10 years later after I know it's not the same system, but I was just kind of curious and 10 years after I messed around with facial recognition software, what they were telling you in training.
Oh, yeah, it's I can't remember the training, too much of the training part, but I know it was definitely good software to use, and it did help in other cases as well. I know I don't use it too much now in the job that I'm doing now, and I'm sure it's even gotten even better. I don't use a facial recognition software now, but I'm sure it's even better now. So I'm actually curious to how it has changed.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was the quality of the photo because it was always one of those things. You were getting some convenience store pixely like a
Yeah.
picture
Oh my gosh. Yeah, those are the worst.
that you're trying to do, and of course they're not even looking at the camera most of the
Right.
time. It can be tough. But you talked about just being part of the process, and I think at this time I can just imagine you're going to school, theory, get into internship, you're starting to get a little bit of practical experience. And then for the first time, you see how the process works. You see how you can be a piece of the pie
Right.
and influence cases. And that's always a fascinating feeling to experience that and to know that you contributed.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's definitely being a detective without the badge, because I'm like, I don't want to go out there. I don't want to be out there, but at least I can pretty much do the investigation and research behind the desktop.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did this guy have a history of
Uh,
robbery or?
I believe he did. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I believe he did. I
Yeah.
just can't remember the particular of the case, but yeah, that one was a good arrest.
Yeah. I know you said I know you said it does the driver's license, but does it also do mugshots
Yes.
comparison?
Yes.
Yeah.
The
So it
mugshots. Yep.
gives you, and that's easy to get to with the sheriff's office and
Yeah.
whatnot. So that's
Yeah.
it's an interesting, it's an interesting software and definitely has room for improvement. But
Mhm.
kudos to you for being an intern to help solve a case.
I
So
know.
good deal.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you were the intern for almost 2 years. When does the public school district police get on your radar?
So when I was working at the sheriff's office towards the end of my internship, and it had to end because I was graduating. So you could
Mm-hmm.
only do the internship if you were in school. If you were
Mm-hmm.
still enrolled in classes, that's when you could continue on with the internship. So once I graduated, I knew that I was done, and I wanted to stay, but at the time they had no full-time positions, and there were talks, but then it just never opened up. And so I'm like, okay, so like pretty much like the last 6 months of me being there, getting closer to graduation, I was looking for jobs, and a lot would come up, and I'd apply here and there, and I would get interviews. And then I was told by one, I think it was my crime analysis manager at the time, that she told me that there is Orange County Public Schools does have district police, and they were hiring for analysts. They're kind of building their team, and I never knew that the school board had a school police. I'm like, oh wow. So that was completely new. And even when I applied, I didn't even know what I was applying to, because of course, like when you're reading the job description, it's still just words, right? You don't really know what you're going to actually be doing. And I didn't know anybody there, but I'm like, okay, let me apply. And I was able to get letters of recommendation from the sheriff's office, and I did get an interview. And it's funny because I actually applied twice. The first time I did not get it, And I knew I wouldn't get it because I went into the interview so nervous because I felt like even though I did my little research and I was like looking up the department, I just felt like didn't have a lot of information. So I felt like I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So as soon as I left the interview, I'm like, I did not get that. And I didn't. And so a second time came up again. I applied again. And then of course the second time I did get it. So at that time I felt more prepared and kind of like, okay, like I think I know what. And now that I have the first round of questions, and now I knew what they were gonna kind of ask me, I'm like, okay, I think I could prepare a little better. And so it worked out, and I did get it. And it wasn't, of course, the job. I don't want to say it wasn't the job I wanted because I was open to a new career, a new kind of like, it still involves criminal justice, just in a different realm, right? Because it's law enforcement and education. So I had to kind of change it from not just being crime analysis and stats and like having cases. It kind of went to like doing intelligence analysis and involving student discipline and FERPA laws and what information I'm able to share with law enforcement involving a student of concern, and school threats, and learning how OCPS works, and again just like blending the law enforcement and educational parts of it, which was now the 5.5 years that I've been there. Every year we've grown, so it's gotten better than when we first started. So that's a great thing, that we're evolving, and more agencies are knowing that we exist and asking us for information, and we're able to help. And every time there's a case involving a juvenile, they reach out and, hey, can you ID? They just only have sometimes a social media handle, and they're like, hey, can you ID? And we'll do our research and start looking into the student. Sometimes it's just as simple as knowing their background, like, oh, we recognize that building, I think it's this school. And we'll reach out to the school and say, hey, we're helping out our law enforcement partners. Are you able to ID this student? And then kind of putting the pieces together. And that's how we can help out our local law enforcement partners. So that's been pretty cool. So it's like I'm still doing crime analysis, investigative analysis, but in a different aspect. So that was a change, but it was a good change because I was able to do something else, but still kind of be in my criminal justice career.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Back to the interview when you did it the second time. Was it the same questions with the same people?
It was, I think it had some different questions. And then I think one or two people, probably, it was like 5-6 people. I was so nervous. I can't even tell you who I remember because I just knew it was different people. I think I had a couple of the same, and then the questions changed a little bit. But for the most part, it was like those general questions like, why do you want to work here? And what do you know about OCPS? So I just knew I felt more prepared when I got it the second time.
Thank goodness they don't record those.
Oh my God.
Right?
I would never want to see myself in an interview or hear myself. Even this podcast, I'm like, I don't want to hear myself talk.
It would be both cruel and fascinating if they recorded you and then when you retired, they played it at your retirement party.
Yeah, that would be funny. That would be funny to see. Kind of like, surprise, we've had this all along.
Yeah. But no, I definitely would not want to see mine. I probably wouldn't want to see any of them, right? As much as I'm at least comfortable with listening to my own voice at this point in the game, but when it comes to interviewing, that's not something that I want to relive. Even the ones that I got, probably I would be like, oh, so cringy.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. With this position, because as you mentioned, most folks don't know that the school has like a police unit, let alone analysis at that police unit, right? That's not something that I think is standard across the United States. Now, there's a lot of schools, obviously, that have school resource officers, but I'm not so sure in terms of the organization that you have there at Orange County. Not everybody's at that level. Describe that to the audience a little bit of how the police unit there for the public schools, and then we can dive in a little bit more to the analysis function.
Okay. So the district police started in 2014 and I started in 2019. So I know at first when they were developing, it wasn't what it is now. And at first it was providing police services to the district, kind of like an SRO, but also area managers for schools, like if they needed assistance, sometimes even outside of police work. and it was also like administering school resource officer agreements. They were kind of dealing with that, yeah, like initiating the policies and procedures and what the district police or school police would be. And I know for the Intel team, I believe it started around 2017. And again, it was pretty much receiving any law enforcement requests for student information. And then I think it started with them building the communication center, because we do have our own dispatchers. So I know that started first, because that team at first started as security, and then it evolved to actually having dispatchers there, and they receive calls from the schools, whether it's like something that's happening on campus, any threats, any fights, anything big going on. The dispatchers will receive the calls. And then as far as my team now, and what we do is a little bit of everything. We do work closely with our dispatchers, because of course they do receive the first notification from the school. So if there is a threat or a fight or something going on, we help them either by pulling up the cameras, because we do have cameras for all of our schools.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of help them in that way, with either if we have to kind of notice a certain time frame or capture a screenshot. And our local law enforcement partners also have access to our school cameras, so we try to be as helpful in helping them, of course, with that, because they can't download any footage, so we would be the ones helping to download that. And besides either observing cameras for any safety issues, we also are big on monitoring social media for any threats or violence. Of course, these kids post everything online, and most of it is public. So if we catch anything we see of concern, or if they're saying they're going to go to school tomorrow and they're going to bring a gun, those are like exactly what we try to find. Or if we come across it, we want to let the schools know, and of course our local law enforcement partners know, and try to ID. Sometimes we do already know the student, because we try to have our following already. And again, because this is all public, it's easy to just follow and kind of find these pages, or we try to, because sometimes we already know about this particular student because of their discipline, or because of what we've been involved in. So we probably already know about the student, and so we kind of just try to dig for social media, again, because they put everything out there. And so big on the social media part. We also create intelligence products, whether it's like either a workup, which contains student information, as much as information we can provide, and I would say bulletins, so either situational awareness or informational. And we do our bulletins internally and externally. So internally, pretty much it would go to our leadership, or it would go to our schools, and it could be from this event in the area is happening that may affect your school, or it could be a local rapper that wants to come and like disrupt the campus during dismissal and kind of create a scene, from where that this person has a gun and they keep mentioning that they want to come to show up to school tomorrow to bring it. So it just varies from what bulletins we create, and to let them know like this is what's going on. And yeah, so that's it. It's a lot of making our own work too, because as soon as we build a social media following, and we are more involved with our schools, because of course we can't be in every single school every day. So we try to build those relationships with our principals and SROs, and have them know, hey, we exist, like the Intel team here exists, and you could ask us for any requests or information. We could hopefully help you and be involved in that. And so my team, we're actually 5, and so we're all assigned to specific schools, like geographically. And because we have over 200 schools, so there's no way like we have to each of us.
I was going to ask that. How many schools, how many students?
Yeah, I think we have 210 schools right now, and it's over 200,000 students, so it's a lot. It's big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could keep us busy. We also receive and review any Fortify Florida tips and crime line tips, and those are just reporting tools that are done anonymously. If they choose to, they could put as much information as they want, including like audio or media, and we will help, again, because our local law enforcement get those as well. So we help if we're needed, pretty much, because we don't as a school police, we don't have any cases. So because we don't have jurisdiction, so we more so are helping and assisting our local law enforcement partners if they need it, which typically they will ask us for the student information. So we pretty much give them everything except for discipline. Under FERPA laws, we're not allowed to give them discipline information. We're not allowed to give them any like HIPAA related. So of course, any medical or mental health issue, any of that stuff, we're not allowed to give. But like with their name, their school, their emergency contact information, addresses, any like previous schools, all that information we're able to give. And then of course, if we do have their social media information, we're able to give that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we kind of help our law enforcement partners. Big one too, we do attend like our district and school-based threat assessment or threat management meetings, and that's big on how we familiarize ourselves with concerning students, since again, like we can't be at every school. Those threat management meetings in each school, well, we focus on middle and high schools, and sometimes K-8, sometimes elementary, depending on the need. But those are the meetings that we try to attend because they do talk about the concerning students in those meetings. So that kind of helps us bring back, okay, this is who I need to look into, or kind of check their discipline, or see if they do have criminal history, and then kind of help with that if in the future this student does become a continuous concern, or hopefully nothing worse happens, but kind of keep them on our radar and become familiar with them.
So you mentioned not having cases yourself, and that, so obviously you have a couple of different customers, I can imagine, as an analyst here. You got outside the school, you got police departments coming with you, maybe asking for information on person of interest that would be a student. And then you have the school themselves, whether that's somebody maybe asking for information within an incident that happened in the school, whether it's just something that breaks school policy or it comes into something that may be a bigger threat. But I'm surprised that you don't have more of those cases within the school, right? If there's a certain case inside the school that is being investigated, maybe it's to the point where it's not yet going to outside the police department, but it would be something that you would handle in-house, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah. So we do have in-house internal cases, I guess you can say. I guess by case I meant criminal cases, and we don't have to go over that. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. But we do keep up with our internal cases, and it more so with discipline, which we do keep internal. That's since we can't give that information out. So when it's due to their discipline, then we will kind of document on our end, keep them on our radar, and if we do find social media, then we just kind of either track it or document it that way.
Now, when you are working an in-house case, sorry for lack of better term, is that where you are now allowed to evaluate some of the data that you talked about that you wouldn't give to a police department outside of the school?
Yes. So if it becomes where it's like an urgent or life-threatening case or incident, I think everything goes out, right? You give every information that you can, even if it involves discipline, because of the need or the urgency of the case or the incident that's happening. So that information we're able to give is just like, it has to be something like, imminent, where that information is needed, whether the student just made a threat or they're at the school right now with a gun. And so then that's why we can release more information. But other than that, as far as like discipline and either like mental health issues, it is kept in-house, and we just try to document on our end. And if we do it, we try to help our law enforcement partners as much as we can. So whether it is involving illegal or somehow, we would try to provide as much information as we can.
This is Amanda Wiggins, and my public service announcement for you, specifically analysts, is your decisions, your actions, your work provide good to this world. Know the importance of these things and take pride in doing your best, because it's your best that truly makes a difference.
I'm Mandy Krueger, and this public service announcement is for you. Are you tired? Don't feel like doing that response times analysis? Newsflash, neither do I. Go drink a cup of coffee, grab yourself a dirty soda if you're in Utah, pull your weight, don't be a slacker.
Well, so let's stick on the topic there of data, because you spent a couple of years with the sheriff's office, got yourself familiar with the sheriff's office data, and now you've been with the school resource officers. The public school police for several years now. So are there other data sets that you have access to with the school police that you wouldn't normally see at a sheriff's office or a police department?
Yeah, so we are able to track different things. So we do have data that we keep, again, in-house, but where it's like either the most fights that are occurring in what schools, either specific to to discipline or threats or firearm related incidents. So we do have those type of data for each school. And then from the difference from like the sheriff's office, it was a lot of crime stats, and it was kind of like, where is crime happening and what sector or what area is happening? Is crime up or is crime down? So that would, and then there was like a system in place where you would see like all the numbers and either if it was a big change and then based on that you would create either like an area of focus bulletin, or you would know like, okay, there's a lot of crime happening here, what is going on here, and then follow up on all the reports and kind of link cases. And it was just so different. And then here it is a little bit less, I wouldn't say we do a lot of data, but we do have certain things in place or like information from outside of district police that we're able to access that involves like a student information or kind of how to track things. Like a new thing I started the last school year was tracking like trespass incidents, and how many of that we kind of see in our schools. We're kind of protecting like, hey, make sure you're keeping the doors locked and you're not letting anyone outside in. And so that was just interesting, just kind of to see. And I just started doing that. So we're kind of open to tracking things on our own or creating like our own work, like I mentioned. And again, the information is kept in-house, but if it's needed, it's there.
Yeah. I know, is there opportunities for if a teacher wants to report something that he or she has seen, that's something that you all would have access to that data as a possible source?
So if a teacher is trying to report, I don't think we have anything where it's tracking it or we're collecting data, but if they did have that type of request, it would either be if they submit a 4 to 5 Florida tip, or they call it into our dispatch center, or they let like their leadership know, and then it gets to like my chief, and then it trickles down to us, and then we kind of can assist in whatever way like we can depending on the request. So I'd say that's, I don't know, I wouldn't say we have something where we're tracking that data.
Now, so obviously school shootings are always a big topic. And so I'm curious, do you all as analysts and with I guess in conjunction with the school police, go through training, scenario type training on active school shooter?
Yeah. So we, as analysts, any related analyst trainings and conferences that we're able to go to, we try to. I know we work alongside our emergency management department, and every year they have like preparedness days where it's essentially preparing principals and APs and even deans sometimes with certain information they may need, whether it comes to knowing what to do if there's an active shooter and kind of following standard response protocols, whether it's a hold or secure or a lockdown, those protocols in place where they know what to do should an active shooter or any emergency situation happen, that they know what to do. And even just knowing about our team, knowing about what information they need to call into our dispatch center. And we even have like our Orange County Sheriff's Office come, or even Orlando Police come and kind of give either trainings or presentations of how they help or how their involvement goes. And in those preparedness days, I know last year we did do like an active shooter exercise, and it kind of exposes the principals and even us, like if this were to happen, kind of like what their reaction is. And it really was like a whole like simulation. And some principals just like get so freaked out, they run out. And then or like when I was in there helping as an observer, or just helping, kind of seeing what they're doing. Are they locking their doors? Are they turning off the lights? Are they putting the blinds down on their windows? And then you have like your safe corner, and you kind of have to get outside of view, and either what are you going to do? Are you going to use anything to protect yourself, or put things in the door to like prevent them from coming in? And it really offered, I know even me, even though I wasn't the one really having to do something, it was like the principals and APs, but it gave them that like experience, so to say, like, oh my God, this is really intense, because some of them even were like dropping their keys and then trying to lock, because you're hearing these fake gunshots, because again, we're doing simulation. And it was just, from being an observer though, it just made it that much more real though, because I'm like, I can't imagine, I never want to imagine, like God forbid it ever happens, but school shootings happening nationwide and or even out of the US, it's just scary to think about, but it's better to be prepared. And I can't say you're always going to be 100% prepared, but at least you know what to do.
Yeah. And I gotta imagine in your training that there's the worst probably case that I can think of off the top of my head was the Uvalde school
Yes.
shooting. And just brought it up here now because I was just thinking I saw that in the news where the former district police chief was charged with child endangerment based off that case. So I gotta believe like that's obviously something being taught, being say, hey, like this we need to learn from this. This is this was what not to do kind of thing. Like we go and talk about don't be that
Mhm.
analyst, like don't be this guy type of thing
Yeah.
as you're going through this.
Yes. Yep. And kind of learning. I didn't read. Get too into it, but it's even reading about kind of learning what they did right and what they did wrong, and you can never be 100% prepared. But again, seeing the flaws or the errors they made, it helps in training and kind of better preparing.
Yeah. And I participated in a school shooting exercise when I was in Tennessee. They were just asking for volunteers, and I just took the day off and went down and was a volunteer. And it was just a scenario exercise. Is they wanted us to go through the school at different times and whatnot, and we were evacuated and everything else. And then they wanted us to like when we ran out, they were just asking us questions like, "What's the first thing that's going through your mind?" Talk through. They first wanted us to talk as if we were stay in character, and then they
Mhm.
said broke, and then okay, now just evaluate it, break character, and then give us what you thought about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then one guy I think nailed it on the head. He's like, it was too reserved. He thought that the whole place was too quiet. He thought that like if there was a real shooter going on there would have been way more commotion and way more like chaos. And I don't know if that was true, but I thought that yeah, when I hindsight, it almost seemed too. I think he used the word sterilized, and I felt. And once he said that, I was like, yeah, I kind of did feel that. But also, I've never been in one before either, so I have no
Yeah.
idea what to compare it to. But it was an interesting experience for me to be part of that exercise.
Yeah. I will say I think it was a year or 2 years ago when we had this active shooter drill, and the shooter actor, she was very good in getting into character because she was banging on those doors and yelling, and yeah, she played the part pretty well, which I
Yeah.
think why it shook up the principals even though it was not real, but it really did put them, I think, into perspective.
Yeah, no, and I could see that. I mean, and you talk about the principal there too, because then the principal is usually most of the time the principal is the top dog, right?
Right.
He or
Right.
she's the one making the decision and making all this, and then there's got to be a sense of obviously from their perspective of not having control of the school in multiple ways, right? Because if in
Right.
this scenario they're obviously with a police chief with the schools, like they're looking to them for guidance.
Right. Yeah.
All right, no, I think that's it's fascinating. Well, hopefully you never have to put your training into use, right?
Right.
Um, that's obviously an awful situation, but I am glad that uh, your school district takes it seriously and runs through these scenarios.
Yes, yep. It like I said, it is scary to be in that mindset, but thinking about what we do and what my team and I do, it really is like trying to do the best we can to make our schools safer and everyone to be safe, and really showing the importance of any threats or anything you come across, just report it or let someone know. You always want to, if you can, you always want to try to prevent things from happening. And for these schools, like your school, like your students, and it cannot be a student, it could be anyone coming from the
Hmm.
outside in, but just better preparing. And if they do have those questions, to reach out.
All right. And so, in terms of the school, in terms of the intelligence that you are gathering, any patterns and trends that you're seeing?
Now that it's
You,
summertime, it's slowed down, but what I usually see is these candy drugs, or like what it looks like the actual candy or snack, but it's drug infused or has like THC in it, and but it really looks like the real thing. So for me, I can't say we have seen this in our schools, but it's something to be on the lookout for, because like I said, it does look like an actual real like a real snack, and it's not. So those are things that we, like a perfect example, if we come across like a current trend like that, or like a bulletin that we see externally, we try to kind of create it our own or put that information out to our schools, like, hey, if you see this or if you see something like this, like be aware that it's not what it is.
So,
Or even
so
certain tools, like sometimes we want to come across like phone cases that look like guns or make gun noises or something. And again, these are things that not everyone could be aware of. When we catch certain things like that, become aware, we try to give our schools that information so they are in the lookout. If they do come across this, they know what it is.
yeah. So what you're saying is don't take candy from strangers.
Right. Yes. That rule will never get old.
Yeah, that would be something else. Is someone give me a lollipop, and that's not what
I know. I
that's
think it was
not what I
mostly like
expected.
gummies. Yeah, it was mostly like
See,
gummies.
yeah, gummies seem to be innocent too, and they're not so innocent. I gotcha.
Right.
Oh, all right, very good. So let's just talk about some of your education. As I mentioned in your intro, you are FDLE certified, and so you just got done with your certification in this past December. So
Yes.
I'm curious, about 6 months out now, how would you evaluate the program at this point?
The program helped me a lot. Some things were a refresher, some things didn't apply to my current position, but regardless, it was just great information to learn about and even bring back or kind of keep handy. And it's just interesting what different analysts do in their respective positions. And I really enjoyed my time there. And even though it was like having like schoolwork again and doing like homework again, at times it was a little stressful, but we had such a great class and we were very good at helping each other out and help when we were struggling at some parts, like the Excel portion. Oh my gosh, I can't, I'm never going to say I'm an expert in Excel, but I'd say pretty good at Excel. But the things we were learning there and how long the formulas were, I'm like, oh yeah, I will never be able to remember this. Like I will always need to look back at my notes. But it was just all of it, learning about like cell phone analysis and like crime mapping and forecasting and even financial analysis that I've never really done before. And it was all just interesting and great just to have in my toolbox and bring it back to even my team. And even with the more like open source intelligence research and knowing like what tools and websites to use, that one was a big one to bring back to my team because we do a lot of open source and social media research. So overall, it was great. Like I'm like waiting for my colleagues to be able to go when they have the chance to go. And I think it's definitely something every analyst should do because
Nice.
you'll learn something for sure.
Nice. All right, and then the master's degree, as I mentioned too, I find the emphasis on criminal profiling, crime analysis, and police leadership. And we mentioned it was from Central Florida. Go into that. It's been several years now since you finished up that master's degree, but what was beneficial that you learned from that program that's helping you as an analyst today?
Sure. So when I was completing my undergrad and my graduate degree, they of course had these like certifications you can do as well or along or within it. So I knew I was going to take those classes anyway. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do these classes anyway for my degree, I might as well apply for the certificate so then I could kind of do like a 2-in-1. And so when I was completing my undergrad, I did the criminal profiling. And then when I was doing my graduate degree, I did the crime analysis and police leadership certificate. And again, it was just classes I was going to take anyway. So I had to, but I still had to like apply for it separately. So I had to apply for that certification and then make sure I was taking those classes to receive the certificate. So it was like, again, like a 2-in-1 or, so I'm like, okay. So it worked out that way where it was classes I was interested in. And just like the class or the certification itself, I just liked it because like criminal profiling, that was something I knew I wanted to do because at first I thought like, okay, I want to be a criminal profiler, but then I realized that's not what they call it here locally. And I knew I federally, even though it seems cool to go to the FBI, I knew I didn't want to relocate for work. I didn't want to move. So I'm like, okay, I can't do that. So criminal profiling for me was like learning what crime analysis is, but they're different. But still, I was like, okay, that is what I want to do. So I did like the classes that they offered since it taught a little bit about techniques and tools that were used in criminal investigations. And then getting into crime analysis, it really helped me with learning ArcGIS, which was like the crime mapping and using that. I've never used that software before. And when I took the certification, it like I think full semester was just about ArcGIS, and it's a great software, but it was a little complicated because they were teaching us how to do it from like the beginning, so knowing like the shapes and the formulas and putting things together and putting locations and knowing how to do certain things with the map, that when I was doing it at the sheriff's office, it was pretty much like enter this and everything's done for me. Whereas that was like, no, you have to build it. And so I'm like, oh wow, this is great to learn. And I wish I could have retained it and still be doing it now, but because the work I do is different and we don't really use crime mapping or ArcGIS, so a lot of that kind of is forgotten in a way, but I really like that I did learn it because at least I'm familiar with it. So that was a good class. So that's why that certification to me is a good one to use, especially if you're going into crime analysis, because if you are going to your typical law enforcement agencies, you will be doing crime mapping. And then with police leadership, I think it was just at the time, I can't remember why I chose it, but I know that again, it was like classes I was going to take anyway. And I'm like, this is interesting anyway, just to know kind of like how police works and then in that leadership component. So I'm like, let me just take this as well. So those certifications just kind of played along with my degree and the classes I was interested in. So I'm glad I did it.
Nice. All right. How about the advice time? What advice do you have for our listeners?
Advice, I'd say, thinking about it, I think advice I'd give is if you're looking into getting into a criminal justice profession, I say while you're still in college, to definitely look for and apply for those internships. Regardless if it's paid or unpaid, I think the experience helps and matters so much, and it opens up opportunities and networking for any future jobs. So it really does help you to get that experience and knowing if you really are going to like the job or even the field. And I think it's a great way to do it while you're in school, because you're doing schoolwork and you're also gaining the experience. And yeah, I would say that's very important. And that's a great advice I would give.
Yeah. And I would just look to follow your path, right? And look at the public schools, especially if it's a large county that's going to have its own department. That's definitely some opportunity there for analyst work that maybe not a lot of folks are looking into.
Right. Yeah, and I know I know not a lot of public schools have their own school police, and I think it's just, you could see it's becoming more and more the necessity of it, because there's just so much going on that our local law enforcement, there's so much that they can do that it kind of has to bring like a school police or like specific school analysts to kind of involve themselves in the schools and kind of bring those two together.
All right, very good. All right, we're going to take some calls now. Favorite first jobs. We've got some callers on the line. So first on the line is Anthony. Anthony, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
My favorite first job was my all-time first job, which was being a paper boy. That got me out and meeting people in my neighborhood, and I'm still considered by many to be the best paper boy because I would put the paper directly between the screen door and the front door, so they had easy access.
Yeah, that is definitely going above and beyond. Because when he was talking about paper boy, I was just thinking of the person that just like throws it on the steps or throws it in the driveway. But if he's actually opening the screen door to put it in between there, that is definitely going above and beyond.
I didn't even know that they were still doing that. That's pretty cool, because I would think the same thing, just throwing it and then be done with it.
Yeah. All right, next on the line is Josie. Josie, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
My favorite first job was a college job that I did at a local lake right next to this big popular restaurant. I was a paddle boat attendant, which really just meant that me and this older man threw football for about 3 hours. And I think he was just lonely and didn't want to work by himself. So he paid college kids about $30 for them to come and help run the paddle boats with him.
Well, sounds pretty easy.
Yeah, that's an outside gig if you like the outdoors. So
Yeah.
the son and I don't get along, so I don't know if I would have liked that. But hey, I do enjoy throwing the football around. That's for sure. So yeah, that does seem like a nice cushy summer job that probably kind of miss nowadays, right?
Easy money.
All right, next on the line is Allison. Allison, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
My favorite first job was working at a prosecutor's office. We had a lot of fun there. At one point, we had a March Madness tournament, and the clerical staff won. So all the prosecutors had to cook us breakfast one morning.
Hey,
Nice.
that's nice. You were thinking that the prosecution office was all serious doom and gloom type of stuff. Like here, they're gambling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. It is funny that number one, that's a good first job, right? I always think of myself as like I was flipping burgers for $3 an hour for my first job. So if your first job is working at a prosecution's office on your way to being an analyst, kudos to you. And but I also think of like the office experience there of little things like March Madness polls and whatnot, and that's a good way to build up the team.
Yeah, that is fun.
Yeah. So, did you ever be in a March Madness poll?
No.
No. So,
No,
yeah.
never.
So there you go. You should start one. There you go. You do some team building this upcoming March.
Yeah.
All right. Next on the line is Ritu. Ritu, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
So we arrested people for stealing. It was fun when I was younger because I could run really fast. Yeah, we made a lot of arrests in some of the locations. Definitely a lot of fun. People stealing things from, anything. People walking out with a TV, which is kind of bizarre, to stealing candy. So yeah, we used to have at least 2 to 3 arrests every single day.
Wow. That's a lot, isn't it?
It is, but for that, I guess that location, it was very common.
Yeah.
Like it was just those were their stats for the last I don't know how many years.
So wow, I can't 2 or 3 arrests a day at a store just seems way high.
Yeah, it does. And I thought with our Publix, I was working at Publix years back, and we had loss prevention, and I felt like they could never really catch anybody, or it was very hard because they just go out so fast, and they in the store, even though they knew they were going to shoplift, they could not get them until they would go out the store.
Yeah. So it was actually outside the store and not even outside the parking lot?
Yeah, it was like as soon as they exited the store without paying, that's when you could interfere.
Yeah. Well, I guess in her case, she said they were walking out with televisions, so I guess if
Well,
they're
yes.
being that blatant, maybe it's a little easier than them stealing bubble gum from Publix type of thing.
That's true.
So can you remember the time when someone just basically stole something absurd?
No, I can't, because I honestly, I was like, it was more so I was in the pharmacy department, so it wasn't, I kind of wasn't really exposed to much of the retail side of it. Yeah, customer service, but I'm sure they have stories.
Yeah. Well, I'm here in Tallahassee, so there was a football player years ago played for Florida State called Jameis Winston, and he had a hookup in the seafood department, so he rolled out of there with a bunch of crab legs and got in trouble.
Oh my God.
And not so when you say that about the Publix, that's what came to mind, and I even know where that is. So everybody refers to that as the Jameis Winston Publix because that's where it happened.
Wow, that's crazy.
All right, next on the line is Jessica. Jessica, what's one of your favorite first jobs?
I was the basketball manager for George Mason University back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we went to NCAA tournament a few times. Favorite job.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Got to see the analytics and the ESPN track all the way back then.
That would be cool. Like when you get to get on the TV and see how they go. Interesting being behind the scenes of that and watching their data and whatnot they're all doing behind the scenes. So that's another cool job. So yeah, I was just a resident advisor in college, so I wasn't doing anything cool like going on ESPN.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
All right, so that is favorite first jobs. If you have a favorite first job that you want to share, email me at leapodcast@gmail.com. All right, Stephanie, words to the world time. This is where you can promote any idea that you wish. What are your words to the world?
My words to the world, I'd say if you're doing something or working on something, whether it is personal or professionally, I'd say dedicate the time and do it right the first time, because if you don't, it is just a waste of time and effort.
Very good. Well, I leave every guest with you. You've given me just enough to talk bad about you later. But I do appreciate you being on the show, Stephanie. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.